Welcome to the Books on Air podcast. I'm Suzanne Harris, and my listeners get the story behind every book. Joining me today is Donald Overman, and he's here to talk about his fascinating novel, Insanitytoo. Donald, it's such a pleasure to have you on Books on Air as our guest. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
You know, I'm always curious about books. All books have two stories. Insanitytoo has a really thought-provoking and intriguing plot. And I'm curious, where did the idea for Insanitytoo come from?
Well, it came from my naivete in college. I was just out of the service in 1956, and I was looking at, we were talking about the conflict between communism and capitalism, and I thought I was going to be clever and create a midline that both communism and capitalism could meet and not have to fight over it. So I called it concapsulism. And I tried to bring those forces together. It was very naive. I got an A on my paper, and it was about 4,000 words, and I caught hell from my my teacher for writing so many words that he had to read. But that was where it all started back 60 years ago.
This is such an interesting plot. Would you give our listeners an overview of Insanitytoo?
Sure. I find that the American people do not pay an awful lot of attention to what could be happening to them, and I tried to point that out with the book, which is called Insanitytoo, Too, by going back and tracing it through history. Germany looked for appeasement. They looked to be able to bully Europe into giving him what he wanted, Hitler wanted, and they did. We would much rather have peace through appeasement than we want to have our children and our soldiers killed in the field of battle. Appeasement just sounds so much better, but it never works. It never works because the more you give to a bully, the more they want to take from you, and they also encourage others to do what they're doing because they seem successful at it. And I tried to warn about that, and so I started off with a plot between Russia and China, looking at a very liberal type of president who was not going to do anything unless they were directly attacked. The United States was directly attacked, including where we had agreements. It was somebody else's problem if it wasn't an attack on America. And so I tried to show that through the book that I was using the book as a media to warn and to try to wake America up to what was going on.
You know, I almost felt like you had ripped something out of the headlines, because along with China and Russia, they recruit Iran and North Korea, and they become, quote, the four friends, which I thought was absolutely chilling. And I love it that you talked about the four friends bullying. I like it that you use that word, that they were bullies, they're ganging up on the United States. And in your book, you elect the first female president of the United States. I thought that was also a very interesting detail in your book. The book is just captivating. It's thought-provoking, and it really makes you think, and it really does feel like you have your pulse on the headlines, and that this was something that could have been a news headline this week or next week.
Yeah, well, I'm afraid that it would be a headline in the future years or months coming up if we don't do something about it and stay strong. What people don't seem to understand is that a benevolent power can be a important force, and that the stronger you are, the less likely you are to have to use that force. We seem to want to cut back on military spending, and we seem to want to be able to prove to the world that we're nice guys and don't have a strong military. But unless we have a strong military, somebody's going to take advantage of us. It happened in the West until we got sheriffs and police departments in Western towns. The guy with the gun was able to force his thinking and persona on all of the weaker entities that didn't even carry guns.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And did you research this book? Is this all fiction? How did this evolve? How did the plot for the book evolve?
It evolved from my experience in 1956 in concapsulism, and I've studied and stayed on top of what was happening worldwide. I've been involved in politics and have been, I was original on Goldwater's presidential campaign back in 1950, whatever it was, 8 or whenever the election took place, and I felt that we had a problem with how we approach the world, and we sent sometimes our people to war much too soon instead of being bellicose and announcing that we were going to stay strong and be a protector for the world. Small countries don't need us to help them, or strong countries like Russia and China are going to take them over. China has the largest navy in the world right now, larger than ours, but it's not more powerful. And they announced to the world that they're going to have the most powerful navy in the near future, and they're spending money to build aircraft carriers and ships of war to take that. For what purpose? They don't need to be stronger than us. They don't need to be more powerful than the rest of the world, unless they want to take over other countries, and they've announced that they do. So I think we have a right to an obligation to stay strong. Not
go
war,
ahead.
but to stay strong. And strong people don't get picked on; weak people do.
I think your bully analogy is a really good one. I know that we have piqued the interest of our listeners, and I'm sure that they're saying to themselves, where can I find this book? Let me tell you, it's on Amazon, and when you go to Amazon, you will see a big search feature. If you've never looked for a book on Amazon, if you'll simply type into that big search feature, let me spell the title of the book for you, because it's a little different than you think it is. The name of it is Insanitytoo, but this is all one word. It's spelled INSANITY, no space, TOO, by Donald, DONALD, Overman, OVERMAN. If you put that in the search feature and click on it, the book comes right up. And there's a really good description of the book. And in the upper right-hand corner on the representation of the cover, you see two words that say, "Look inside." If you click on those two words, the book electronically opens, and you'll be able to read an excerpt, and you will just immediately be drawn in. The ideas that Donald is espousing, this is just so interesting. It's a fiction book, but you're going to see things in there that you recognize. So it's really, really, I've used thought-provoking several times, and I really think it will get your attention. Now, Donald, I know that there are some people who are listening to us who really don't like to buy their books from Amazon. Is there another place that they could get Insanitytoo?
Yes, they can order it through my website, which is Donald Lee Overman, Lee, and .com, and that will get, if they have problems, they can leave a message on there, and I will get them a book if they want it. Well, I don't know what stores have it yet, but it's just been released, so I'm not sure it's in a lot of bookstores, but it will be.
What else is on your website?
A lot of reviews. I've spent a lot of time and energy getting reviews. There's a super review that from Hollywood Review, book review, and there's probably 30 other reviews on there that tell about the book. Some good, some bad, but mostly they all say it's a great plot.
Now, I know that you have a plan to launch some social media. How do you think that our listeners, until you get that launched, how could they find you when the social media happens?
There's going to be a platform for the website, and it'll be on all social media. As far as that's what I'm paying for at any rate, and it will be. They'll be able to monitor that and to find out. On my website, I'm going to create a section that will say social media available, and they'll be able to look it up on my website to find out where it is, if they don't find it on their own.
Perfect. Great answer. Now,
thank you.
Oh, my pleasure. Now, this is, I know, a work that you have had in your mind for quite some time, and a work that you've put down on paper. And I know that you also have another book that's coming out that the plot will be similar, the title will be different, but it's a new project that you have coming out in early 2022. But it's going to be very similar to this. Tell me a little about that new project.
Okay. I was told, I wrote Insanitytoo in a format for which is very specific and doesn't get into a lot of prose. It's a lot of action and a lot of excitement and a lot of information, but it doesn't get into talking about how somebody's dressed or that type of interaction. What they had a smile on their face as they said it. I leave that out. I was told that should be in there, and I commissioned the book to be ghostwritten as a novel with prose in it. Same story, same information, same people, but it's going to be a lot more story-ish than the Insanitytoo. I'm calling the book, and it will have a different face on it, and I'm calling it Conflict, because conflict is what all of us face constantly. We have conflict what to have for dinner, conflict what we want to read. We have conflict in who we want to associate with. Our life is built around conflict, and if a story doesn't have conflict in it, and Insanitytoo does have a lot of it, but I'm saying it up front with my new novel, which is going to be called Conflict. And it's going to have all kinds of information about conflict, and people are going to be able to see that as they read the new book.
It sounds like it's going to be a richer format in that you'll give more details and more information about your characters, and that you'll fill out your plot a little bit more thoroughly. Is that fair to say? That's
fair to say, but it's going to take someone traditionally reading to see the value of it. I don't particularly find that I don't want to read that Charlie fell down and he had on a brown suit with a green tie and all that kind of stuff. But that's what people want, and I'm going to give it to them.
Donald, you are such a character. I love it. I love talking to you. Let me ask you one more question. This is such a thought-provoking, intriguing plot. It's one of those things that I suspect people will talk about around the dinner table. But this is your work, and I'm curious, when people buy the book, when they go from being listeners today to buying the book and becoming readers, and they sit down and they read Insanitytoo cover to cover, and they close that back cover either electronically or physically for the last time, do you want them to just feel like they've read a really terrific, intriguing story? Or is there some bottom line other message that you want them to take away from the book?
Yes, there's a lot that I want them to take away. I have tried to incorporate a number of things into the book that are covered up by storyline now, but that are important. For example, I talk the cabinet of the woman president, which is special in the way she puts it together, has decided that they want to redo our unemployment situation. If people will read that as something that is important to them, for example, right now the average person pays 5.5% for unemployment. Their employer pays 5.5%, and it goes on forever until you retire. There's no need for that. If you pay 5.5% and your employer pays 5.5%, in a year, if you had an account that all that money was going into called Charlie's account, Charlie would have a full year of unemployment compensation put aside, and he'd never have to pay it again unless he used it, in which case he would be able to take it out a month at a time, more than he would get out of unemployment, and he'd have all that money available to him instead of paying for the rest of his life and the employer paying for the rest of his life. That's covered in some detail in the book as a thing that the cabinet is working on.
So you put some real detail into the book that you really want the reader to pay attention to and come away with perhaps some new ideas.
Absolutely. Corruption. Every single government employee says, I pledge allegiance to the United States and the Republic, which is, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then they go out and do all kinds of stuff that's against the Constitution. That's fraud. And they ought to be able to, they should be learned to be honest about what they're doing. And there should be penalties for lying to the public and taking a pledge to do something that you have no intention of doing. Our elected officials, our Congress and senators, start off with a lie, and pretty soon they're into, and everybody believes that 70% of our elected officials are crooked, and they probably are. They placate each other, and they work for each other instead of for the American people. And I point this out constantly in the book where the elected officials are duplicitous in what they're saying.
Donald, I can hear the passion in your voice for your book and for your ideas. It's been such a pleasure to have you as our guest today on Books on Air. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you. I'm glad I had a chance to say what I feel.
Good. I'm glad you feel better. Thank you for joining us. You've been listening to the Books on Air podcast, brought to you on webtalkradio.net. And remember, you can find Insanitytoo by Donald Overman on Amazon. I'm Suzanne Harris, and I hope you'll join us for the next Books on Air podcast. Remember, you never know who's going to be here, and you never know what we're going to talk about. Thank you so much for listening.